for this fun book by our dear friend Mickey Singer called Living Untethered. And so I love this book. I love Michael Singer. And okay, and all right, I'm going to go ahead and put it up in the group. There we go. And oh, and looky here, Michael Singer coming on over here on Gather from another different exploration. He's putting out YouTube every day, or about every other day or something. Anyway, to do that, open this. All right. So, chapter 8, the origin of matter. If you study the origin of matter, you'll find that scientists throughout the world pretty much agree on a basic model of creation. They have an understanding that about 13.8 billion years ago, there was a giant explosion called the Big Bang. Prior to this explosion, it is thought that all the galaxies and everything within them, all the mass and matter of the universe, fit into a space smaller than an atom. This is modern science speaking, not some crazy theory. With awe and appreciation as our goal, let's explore how the science of creation can serve to liberate us spiritually. After the Big Bang, the energy expanding out was so hot that it didn't have any shape or form. It was just unbridled radiation. Within a fraction of a second, subatomic particles began to form from this energy field. No elements as we know them could form because the radiation was too hot and it was expanding out at the speed of light. Thus, the entire universe was without form for about 380,000 years. After that, the radiation cooled down enough to where the fundamental forces of gravity and electromagnetism could pull the subatomic particles together to form the first atoms. We know these subatomic particles as electrons, neutrons, and protons. It was all born from the primordial energy field and the subatomic particles emanating from that field. Modern science calls this the quantum field, and quantum physics is the science that studies these subatomic particles and how they create matter as we know it. Oh, and I see Rafi has his hand up. Yes, please go ahead, Rafi.
Okay, right away I have a problem with this. It says it was without form for about 380 years. A year is when this planet rotates one time. There was no this planet.
Right. No,
How
he's not saying there was.
how could there possibly have been a year, much less 380 of them? I mean, it's boggling.
Yeah,
How
no,
do you measure a year when there's no Earth spinning around one time to be a year? Oh, never mind. Bye.
yeah, no, yeah, it's relative. I mean, 380,000 years is what he said. And and
Or whatever.
and
It's still a year, and there
I
is.
know, but that's because that's our time. That's how we measure. Otherwise, what would he have measured? 300, 380,000 Googles or 380,000 blurbits or whatever? No, we know years. So that's why he's saying year. It's because
Well,
that time period we are aware of.
380,000 years in a dream is nothing. Okay, never mind. Bye bye.
Right. Yeah. No, he's talking and okay. Yeah, bye-bye. Glorian, please go ahead.
I'm laughing because I was thinking the same thing. And ultimately, then it came to me that words are symbols. He's using symbols because
Right,
this is what we're aware. But ultimately, it's all a myth, the atomic myth. It's all a myth.
right.
Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you. And that's true. It's the story that we tell about how we got here. It's just the same amount of a story as in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's the same story. So, whatever you want to call it, he's saying this from a scientific point of view. This is how science is explaining the origin of the universe. from what they're calling the Big Bang. And so, I mean, you can't relate. You can't say, well, yeah, but the Earth wasn't here then, so how could it have been? No, that's not the point. The point is that's how they estimate or measure that it took that amount of time for the radiation to cool down enough that it could actually begin to form the quantum field. It didn't just burst and then all of a sudden everything was here. It everything has gone along in a very uh, methodical way from the very beginning. And we know that because we can see the effects of it. That's the only way you know anything, is because you can see the effects of it. So he says modern science calls this the quantum field, and quantum physics is the science that studies these subatomic particles and how they create matter as we know it. The first atoms were hydrogen, excuse me, because it is the simplest structure. One negative electron and one positive proton. We can all agree that that is what science tells us. Because of the force of magnetism, these particles attracted each other to form an atom. As hydrogen atoms began to form, masses and masses of thick hydrogen gas clouds accumulated. As these clouds thinned out, subatomic light particles called photons started to escape. And that was the beginning of light as we know it. Interesting that the Bible says, in the beginning, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, from Genesis 1:2. That is pretty close to how science sees it. In these beginning times, no light could escape from the ultra-thick gas clouds. Once the expansion thinned the clouds out enough, suddenly let there be light, and there was light. Genesis 1:3. It's amazing the similarity of the beginning of creation as told in Genesis as presented in modern scientifically based cosmology. Now that we see where hydrogen atoms come from, we can explore the source of the other elements that make up our world. As the expansion slowed down even more, another one of the fundamental forces came into play, the force of gravity. Gravity is, of course, the force that has the effect of pulling together objects that have mass. Since hydrogen atoms have mass, as the atoms were pulled closer together, the gravity became so strong that it fused two atoms into one. When two hydrogen nuclei fuse into one, a helium atom is created. This process of fusing lighter elements into heavier ones is called nuclear fusion, and has been going on throughout the universe for hundreds of millions of years. It is worth noting that every single time this fusion of two atoms takes place, there is a tremendous release of atomic energy. All of a sudden, nuclear explosions began taking place throughout the universe, releasing powerful radiant energy. This is the birth of what we call the primary stars. A star is born by the fusing together of hydrogen atoms, which releases tremendous amounts of energy and leaves helium atoms as its byproduct. You can think of helium as the ash left behind by this hydrogen fusion process. Wherever the clouds of hydrogen gas were thickest after the Big Bang, the first primary stars started to burn. That is literally where stars came from. Every star you looked at to this day was born through the hydrogen fusion process. Though this all started 13.8 billion years ago, we have scientific evidence of it today. Stars are being born right now, and we can observe the process. If you have binoculars strong enough to see the Orion Nebula, you will see gases with stars shining inside. Nebulae, like the Orion and the Horsehead, are not just beautiful pictures of glowing, colorful gas clouds. They are nurseries for stars. Stars are being born inside those gas clouds via the exact same process that happened 13.8 billion years ago, when the first stars were created. Stars are born, and as we shall see, also die in a cosmic cycle of life, mirroring what is going on here on Earth. In our exploration thus far, we have a universe limited to hydrogen and helium gases and brilliant burning stars that light up the cosmos. But the outer world we interact with each day is much more complex. Where did the rest come from? To understand this, we must first take a closer look at the life cycle of a star. As the hydrogen gases within a star keep fusing, gravity pulls the produced helium into the core of the star because helium is heavier than hydrogen. This increases the gravitational pull of the core enough to offset the outward radiance of the explosions caused by hydrogen fusion. This is how the star stays stable. What happens when the star runs out of hydrogen to fuse? The star will start to die. In the early stages of the dying process, any hydrogen remaining outside the core will ignite and expand outward to create a red giant star that is many times the size of the original star. To put this in perspective, when a star the size of our sun begins to run out of hydrogen to burn, it will expand into a red giant large enough to swallow the Earth. But don't worry, scientists estimate that our sun has enough hydrogen to burn for another 5 billion years. Meanwhile, as the star starts fusing hydrogen, the gravitational pull of the helium core will become greater and greater because there are no longer fusion explosions to offset it. The star will start to collapse into its core. Depending upon the original size of the star, its core will either drift off into space or the increased force of the gravity on the core will become great enough to begin fusing helium into more complex elements, such as carbon. The fusion process of these more complex elements will reignite the star even hotter than before. Depending upon the size of the star, these death throes can go on again and again. Cycle after cycle, more and more complex elements will become the product of fusion of lighter elements, and eventually the star will begin to collapse again as it runs out of fuel. Every time this death cycle takes place, more and more elements of the periodic table are created. Let's see, would somebody else like to read a bit? I'm kind of running out of voice.
Let me just do one thing. When I come back, I'll read, Lynn. Just
Okay,
give me a few minutes.
I can read right now.
okay, good. Yeah, so in case you're wondering, he's bringing us to a point. So, he's not just trying to teach us about how the universe began and how atoms are formed and such. He's bringing us to a point. So, yes, go ahead, Rafi.
How many of these cycles of death and rebirth a star will go through is dependent upon the original size of the star. The larger the star, the greater the gravitational force exerted during its collapse, and thus the greater the force available to reignite the fusion process of the more complex elements. In most stars, this process will stop when the byproduct of fusion is iron, element 26 in the periodic table. This is because iron absorbs more heat during fusion than the fusion process creates. Thus, iron will not sustain a fusion reaction. Large stars will progress until they have cores of iron surrounded by shells of the remaining elements from the previous cycles that were not fully burned. This is how the lighter elements of the periodic table 1 to 26 were created, all the elements from hydrogen to iron. As interesting in education as all of this is, remember that the purpose of this discussion is to see where the outside world comes from. As amazing as it seems, the elements that make up our world were forged in the stars. Take your body, for example. We have already explained where all the elements that make up your body come from. They are the direct byproducts of what makes the stars shine. Almost 99% of the mass of the human body is made up of 6 elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. All of these elements are lighter than iron and thus were produced by the burning of commonplace stars. We know all of this is fact, not theory. Scientists have studied stars at all stages of the stellar life cycle, and we know what they are made of. Regardless, some people ask, don't these scientific facts challenge my belief that God is the creator of the universe? An appropriate response would be, of course not. They merely show you how God created all the structures in the universe. The stars are the furnaces that we use to create the universe. Every single atom you interact with was created in the stars, and at this very moment, billions and billions of stars are forging more elements. Busy, busy, busy. In Pittsburgh, we have steel furnaces that are so hot we can forge steel. We use that material to build our giant skyscrapers. Likewise, the stars are the furnaces that have forged the atoms we interact with every day. Hopefully, you will never again look up at the stars in the same way. Can I look up at the stars and go, ooh, how pretty? Chapter 9, The Power of Creation. Now that we've seen how ordinary stars create the lighter elements of our world, we can move on to an even more fascinating topic: how the heavier elements on the periodic table are created, like gold, platinum, and silver. The heavier elements are all those with an atomic number greater than iron, 26. Iron forms the dividing line because it absorbs more heat than it releases during fusion. As such, iron doesn't emanate enough heat energy to stop the star from collapsing. Unless the original star was exceptionally large to begin with, a red supergiant, it will finally die when it gets to an iron core. What happens during the death of a red supergiant star is one of the most amazing events in the known universe, and provides the energy source needed to create the heavier elements. If the star is large enough before its collapse, the intensity of the collapse can actually crush the atoms in the core. Ooh. Instead of fusing the iron atoms together, this tremendous force pushes their electrons into the nucleus itself. Since the electrons are negatively charged and the protons in the nucleus are positively charged, they attract each other and form neutrons, which have no charge. Once this happens, all that is left of the iron core is a mass of tightly packed neurons. There are no atoms left, no electrons, and no protons. The intensity of the collapse of this large star down to just neutrons was destroyed in the structure of matter as we know it. What is left is a neutron star, and it is tiny in size but enormous in mass. And that makes it fun. Neutron stars are physically about the size of a city, but have a mass that is more than 300,000 times heavier than the planet Earth. The density of a neutron star is so great that if you brought a teaspoon of it down to Earth, it would weigh 12 trillion pounds. The amount of energy released by the collapsing of the star's core down to just neutrons is so powerful that it creates a colossal explosion called a supernova. This explosion is so enormous that a single supernova emits more light than the combined light of all the billions of stars in the galaxy put together. It is the brightest, most powerful explosion we have discovered in our universe. As it turns out, the enormous energy force generated during a supernova explosion is precisely what is needed to create the rest of the elements we interact with each day. When the force of gravity was unable to do during the creation of the lighter elements, the massive explosion of a supernova is able to do: fuse the heavier elements. The next time you look at your gold wedding ring or open a tin can, reflect on the fact that these elements required the combined power of billions of stars to come into existence. We are surrounded by the myriad objects you interact with each day. They are giant skyscrapers and tiny paper clips that effortlessly come in through your senses. At their root, every single one of these objects is made of atoms. You have just taken the time to understand where all these atoms come from and how you did not create them. They were created in the stars. This should serve to humble you and leave you in awe of the power of creation manifesting before you. Hopefully, this deep sense of humility and awe will assist you on your spiritual journey toward freedom and liberation.
All right. So yeah, what's the point of him telling us all this stuff? Well, to me, is to have an understanding of my relationship here. This little person body that I think I am, in relation to, this massive ball of creation that is the paperclip or the or the computer. That's why I talk about this all the time. Look at this thing. Look at this. We have these uh, computers and all this stuff that we think, oh, well, this is just a thing, but it comes from this uh all of this, what you just read, all of this came to the point where we could have a metal that someone could forge in a foundry and build into a a a rail for a railroad, or a body of a car, or body of a computer, or anything. All these things, how did they come about? Through this massive energy that is just moving throughout everything right now. And the whole idea of uh, me, little me, being here, being the master of the universe, well, what Mickey is telling us, he's going to point out to us, here's your place. Here's where you are in relationship to all of this. Here's where you are. And denial of that is, it stops you from actually appreciating, respecting, and loving this incredible situation, this movement, these things that have happened. And if you think that, somehow or the other, you're in some special place, uh, no, you're not. It's everything is here. Everything is in the same place. And like he's going to tell us here, it's not personal. It's not personal. Um, so who else would like to read? And we have about 15 more minutes here.
I can read this one. I don't know. I know Gloria was going to read too, so I don't want to take it from her because Rafi read, but it's
I
up to.
could read a little, or I could read after you. I just wanted to say that, I think ultimately what his point was that all seeming matter contains energy due to its mass. So energy doesn't end, it changes form, as Albert Einstein told us with his whole thing, E equals MC squared. So I think that's the point of it, to recognize that all seeming matter, that's not my way of going about describing it, but what was coming to me is that's what he's saying, to recognize that all matter contains energy due to its mass, meaning that all there is source energy. It can change form, but it doesn't end. Thanks. I could read if you want, Sharon.
Okay, I'll just read a little bit and then I'll give it to you. It's not personal. We just explored where the world around you comes from. It began with the Big Bang, and then all the different types of elements were created through the process of atomic fusion. When stars explode at death, all the matter that build up in the outer shells get blown out into the interstellar space. Carbon, oxygen, silicon, gold, and silver were all floating around as clouds of elements in space. Then gravity pulled them together to form the planets. This is how the planet Earth formed with its 92 natural elements. I think this is really incredible. I mean, when you really see what he knows, because, the whole point is that we don't want to know anything. And also, we really don't know what anything is for. And one of the things that I have come to realize is I don't have to really understand this. I can just be with this, because to understand this the way Michael is a little bit challenging for me. But it's all one thing. It's like clay. Everything here is molded into clay, all consciousness. So the object consciousness is the same, made up of the same thing as what we're made up of. It's all the infinite self. So we love our clay objects because everything here is alive. That's what I have seen just in the last couple of weeks, that you can speak to the aliveness and realize that everything here is alive. And that's pretty much what he's saying, because, it's all from consciousness, which consciousness is from God. Anyway, it can become from the ego, but the ego is part of this. So this is how the planet Earth formed, with its 92 natural elements, all of which were forged in the stars. And that's what we're made of, stars. This process has gone for over 13 billion years, and everything you interact with each day is composed of this stardust, including your body. This is the truth, and we should remember and contemplate it regularly. I mean, we belong to the earth, really. I mean, the body, not who we are, because there is no earth. But we can treat everything. The thing that I've gotten from the Ho'oponopono books is that if you say "I love you" to the invisible constantly, because that's the part of us, the little child in us, or the inner child that has been wounded, because it doesn't know, that part has to wake up. So let's come back to where we started the discussion. We began with the fact that there's always a moment in front of you. Just open your eyes and there it is. Where did it come from? Now we know the moment in front of you came from the stars. The atoms were baked together in solar furnaces, then pulled together into the mass we called Earth. You studied what happened next in science class. The elements joined together to form stable molecules, such as H2O, based on the laws of electromagnetism. Because of the interaction of these laws, there's water in the oceans. As others more complex molecules formed, they created the primordial soup, which all living organisms formed. Every part of every cell in your body is composed of elements created in the stars billions of years ago. This explains where your body came from, but it does not explain where you came from. You are not made of atoms. You are the consciousness that is aware of the objects that are made of atoms. That's great. Your body may be the result of a long process of our Darwinian evolution, but what about you in there? Where did you come from? How did you get in there? And why is it that the way it is, why is it in there? The natural sciences may explain the outside, but what about inside? This is exactly what we will be exploring in the coming chapters. Glorian, you can take it now.
No, I just want to say also, I love what you shared there, Sharon, because that's the idea. Energy, Christ consciousness, God. We can never be separate from God. So in this, it's proving that there is no death, because if we could be separate from consciousness, energy, God, then there would indeed be death. So I like what you shared there. That's how it came to me. So let's see, where are we reading? Okay, in the coming chapters. So I guess what science has discovered about reality should give you more respect for creation, not less. The fact that we are able to explain these phenomenal events that took place should leave you with a sense of awe. Just look at how it ended up after 13.8 billion years. Dare to look at what's in front of you in this light. Now that you know where it all came from, pay attention. What's in front of you is a very holy thing all of it. Now consider whether this process of creation had anything to do with you. Were you around causing any of this to happen? Will you be around for the next billion years causing all that is going to happen to take place everywhere? Of course not. The universe is a phenomenal system of cause and effect. What was causes what is. What is causes that will be. What is causes what will be. This has been happening from the beginning of time throughout the universe. Every single moment in front of you took billions of years with everything happening exactly like it did to manifest as it is. To fully understand what this means, it helps to look at a simple example from your family history. If your great-great-grandmother did not meet your great-great-great-grandfather, you're not here. So if your great-great-great-grandmother did not meet your great-great-great-grandfather, you're not here. That's simply the truth. Let's take a moment to tell a story of how they met so you can see how dependent everything is on everything else. The story begins all the way back with the dinosaurs. After a fierce storm in what is now South Central Florida, there was a big dinosaur lumbering around. When this dinosaur put its big footprint down into the wet soil, it caused a gigantic imprint in the mud. Over time, rainwater accumulated in this deep imprint, and the earth began to erode around it. Eventually, the water area grew so large it became what we now call Lake Okeechobee. I don't know if I said that right, but millions of years later, the Miami tribe, Ayami tribe settled by that lake because of the fresh water, fish, and other animals. Centuries passed, and Spanish settlers built a small town on the edge of the lake. Your great-great-great-grandmother was a descendant of the Miami. Gosh, how do you say that, Lynn? Miami? All right. And your
Say
great-great,
Miami.
but yeah, I don't
It's
know.
in Florida.
Okay, we'll do that, but Miami. And your great-great-great-grandfather was visiting the small Spanish settlement. One day, while it was pouring rain around the lake, your great-great-great-grandfather was drinking in the local saloon. He was so drunk when he stepped out of the saloon, he never noticed your great-great-great-grandmother walking by sopping wet. Just as he stumbled down the stairs, falling drunk to the ground, your great-great-great-grandmother slipped in the mud and fell right on top of him. Well, they looked at each other, started laughing, and it was love at first sight. The rest is history. In other words, if the dinosaur hadn't walked there millions of years ago, and if the Miami tribe hadn't settled there, and if the Spaniards hadn't built a town there, and if it hadn't been raining that day, and if Grandpa hadn't fallen down drunk at that exact spot where Grandma slipped in the mud, you're not here. And neither are a lot of other things. Every single thing is the result of every single thing that ever happened throughout time and space. You're not the doer. You are the experiencer of reality. Should I keep going?
Wow. So do you see, you kind of see where he's going here? Where we are right now is a result of something behind us that was like you can't even fathom. But we sit here all proud, like, oh, I know about this now. Anyway, go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, it's just really pointing out how everything's like interdependent on everything else. If this is true, and it is, then it's pretty silly to think it took 13.8 billion years for this moment to get here. And every single thing had to happen exactly as it did. But I don't like it. That's funny. It's like saying that you don't like that satin has rings. Now do you see why we took the time to explore where what's in front of you came from? It has nothing to do with you. It is the result of trillions of factors that caused it to be that way, the way it is. This is our first encounter of what surrender and acceptance really mean. You don't surrender the outside world. I'm going to take a sip of something. You don't surrender the outside world. You totally accept it. What you surrender is your personal, made up judgment of it. If you were asked whether it's okay with you that satin has rings, you would probably look very puzzled and say, "What's it got to do with me?" That's a crazy question. The truth is, every single thing is that way. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the forces that caused it to be the way it is. And those forces stretch back billions of years. The total acceptance of this truth is surrender. You must let go of the part of you that thinks it has the right to like and dislike the result of billions of years of interactions. Surrender is letting go of the part of you that is not living the truth. That is true surrender. Eventually, you will come to realize that the moment in front of you is a very holy thing. Our scientific exploration of where that moment came from is actually very spiritual. Quantum physicists are now exploring how the entire universe is emanating from an omnipresent, undifferentiated field of energy, the quantum field. They are showing us how everything is made of light. That used to be a strictly spiritual concept. Our scientists and our priests, they are teaching us how the underlying force of creation created creation. Science shows us that every moment before us is worthy of great respect. A spiritual person understands these truths, ingrains them into their being, and lives their life accordingly. That good, Lynn?
Yeah, that's good. And we're at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and mark that. But do you guys get what he's saying here? I think it's pretty clear, actually. Where, that people would say, well, the earth is not real, it's not real, and don't pay attention to it. He's saying that is really an unworthy way of looking at it. Pay attention to it because it's holy. Every single bit of it is holy. And he's going to go into, how it is being right now manifested by a creative mind that is beyond our judgment or description. The story that we make up. I love it that he talks about the stories that we make up about it, the judgments that we have about it. That's the world we see. We don't see the world as it really is. We see the world as what we judge it to be, what we imagine it to be. And that's the problem. Rafi and then Glorian.
Yeah, what you said is very important because what we're looking at is egoless. It is divinely designed, even though it's the dream. It's divinely designed for our benefit, and it is uncaused. It has ever been, forever been, is now, and will ever be. These projected images are there to serve perfectly, and the absolute supreme infinite being that provided all of this for us is what we really are, helping us to wake up to the truth of it. So everything we see out there is working for us. Everything we see out there is there to help, regardless of how we relate to it. The reality is that it's been specifically divinely designed, every moment of it, for us. And no, taking it for granted is not a good idea. Yes, thank you. That was very well said, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Rafi. Yeah. Love what is because it's a gift. That's why they call it the present. It's a gift. Go ahead, Gloria.
Yeah, thank you, Rafi. You know, what was coming to me is, you know, how Jesus tells us in the Course, God did not make the world. The false mind projected concepts out there. So, but we can recognize that God is the substance of all form. So God is the source of all life, and energy is life, and we can never be separate and apart from that. Thanks.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, everyone. This has really been interesting time reading this book by Michael Singer, Living Untethered. And I'm going to go ahead and close out the YouTube and get